And a good Monday evening, friends. Welcome to 13 News Now Plus, Hurricane Hub Live here every weekday evening at 8 p.m. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis. Tonight on HHL, July the 21st, we are nearly a third of the way through the 2025 season. Can you believe it? Starts off June 1st, goes through November 30th, and we're about to wrap up in about a week and a half, July. And overall, it's been quiet. Yeah, we've had 3 named storms out in the Atlantic Basin so far, 6 in the Eastern Pacific, but both basins remain relatively quiet this evening. Now, there is a new area of interest tagged in the Atlantic Basin as Invest 94L. I will tell you, though, it doesn't look like it's going to be much, at least in the short term, at least what's based on current modeling. It's just overall hostile environmental conditions still in the Atlantic Basin. Of note, with 94L right now, it's the first wave that we're seeing coming out of the main development region that later in July into August starts to really heat up a little bit more. So the last advisory issued on our most recent named storm Chantal was on July the 8th. So it's been 13 days void of any named storms out in the Atlantic Basin. That got me thinking, what's been the longest gaps between named storms in the Atlantic Basin? 13 days may seem like a lot, but not really. The largest gap was back in 1999. By the way, this goes back to 1995, so almost 30 seasons. 61 days, over 2 months, without any named storms. And that was from June the 18th through August the 18th back in 1999. And then right behind it, just a couple of years ago, in 2022, we went through 60 days without any named storms. Right before 4th of July, we went through all of August without a named storm in 2022. That was interesting, but that was the year of Ida. And that hit New Orleans. That was a major hurricane, so it was an active season overall. And then 2007, 59 days, and then 2016, 42 days. 2016 was the year of Hurricane Matthew. That was a powerhouse. That was a Cat 5 that moved through the Caribbean, then impacted us here along the eastern seaboard. So you can have rather large gaps of time where it's just crickets. And 13 days so far, it may extend much longer than that, especially since the basin overall is quiet. So every quiet day is a blessing, okay? We don't need a lot of activity in the Atlantic Basin. We don't need anything threatening any populated area. So each day quiet, we're thankful for. Now let's decode Invest 94L. That's the newest area of interest that's tagged out in the Atlantic. So Invest, investigative area, tropical wave that we're monitoring for development, okay? And then 94 is just a number. It's a record number. You remember 93L that was threatening the northern Gulf Coast. This is just a number. It recycles from 90 to 99. And the L at the end just tells us where which basin is located in. L means Atlantic. If there was an E, it would mean Eastern Pacific. Okay, let's get a look at it. It is on satellite imagery, infrared. It's pretty far out there. It's still several hundred miles well to the east of the Windward and Leeward Islands. But notice the development odds here. 10% chance. It did peak on Friday, 20% chance, and then it's been kind of wavering up and down. Earlier this morning, it was back up to 20%. Now it's down to 10%. Winds 30 miles per hour. You can see it's very disorganized. It's a very broad area of some convection, maybe some thunderstorms in there. Even those are rather weak. When we look at it on this filter here, this is telling us the temperature of the cloud tops. So what we're looking for here is some shades of black and red. And if it was strong enough, we'd see shades of white, meaning colder cloud tops, stronger convection. We're seeing a little bit of some stronger storms, mainly to the southwest of maybe a broad center here, but that's really about it. And it is moving at a pretty good clip off to the west at 18 miles per hour. When we get up to that or even 20 miles per hour or higher, sometimes it outruns itself in terms of allowing it to develop. So, and that's not the only thing that's inhibiting this from developing. All right, visible satellite imagery here. You can definitely see there's some broad spin overall. It doesn't look terrible, but the problem here is, for development-wise, is that it's embedded in a large plume of Saharan dust. So that's very dry air in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Dry air detrimental to development, because of course you're in a tropical system. You want it to be moist. You want the mid-levels to be moist, tropical-like air, helping it to ingest and ventilate more properly. Not going to be the case when we're located probably pretty much within all of that. And it is heading due west as well, the same area where 94L is heading to. And this has been I wouldn't say a problem. This has been a limiting factor so far this season. And generally, as we get deeper into the season, we begin to see this plume lift a little bit farther or higher latitudes, allowing for more tropical waves. You can see this robust one just exiting the coastline there. In fact, I will say that looking in the long-range models, GFS and Euro, it does show maybe some chances here. We might see that get tagged as an area of interest here within the next 7 days or so. So not completely dead in the Atlantic, starting to see a little bit some signs of life in the main development region. But as long as this dust is here, likely not looking like it's going to be developing into a named storm, at least in the short term. All right, here we are in terms of the season overall. Again, starts June 1st, goes through November the 30th. We're about a third of the way through once we get through the end of July. And then we hit August, and according to climatology, we do start to see a big uptick as overall favorable conditions present themselves across the majority of the basin. Out in the eastern Pacific, still crickets out here. We were watching another area of interest that was tagged for some development, and the most recent outlook from the Hurricane Center points it to 0% chance. And you can see there's the Hawaiian Islands here. It's a little bit farther to the west than we've seen other developments so far this season. And that's typically a trend as we get later in the season. We see development a little bit farther off towards the west. If it was to get a name, which it's not looking like it will, 0% chance, the next name on the list there is Gil, coming off of 2 major hurricanes with Eric and Flossie. And now that was over about 3 weeks ago that we saw those develop. So it's been rather quiet several weeks out in the eastern Pacific as well as the Atlantic basin. All right, let's get to trivia. This was the question I posed to you on Friday. We talked about the strongest hurricane in regard to wind speed. How about in regard to the lowest pressure? Was it Allen, which had the strongest wind speed, Irma, Wilma, or Katrina? Now, it was a similar storm that was in the 2005 season with Katrina, but it was actually Wilma. This came in after Katrina, and in 2005, peak pressure, 882 millibars. You can see this made impacts to Cozumel over to Cancun, and then took a sharp turn to the north and east, impacting southwest Florida, moving over the peninsula, and then stayed out to sea well to the east of the eastern seaboard back in 2005 there. Again, that peak pressure, it was a bomb, 882 millibars. All right, let's get to tonight's tropical trivia. In the Atlantic, which storm holds the record for the most distance traveled? Was it Sandy back in 2012, I believe that was? Irma in 17, Gustav, or Alberto? I'll have the answer tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Hurricane Hub Live. In the meantime, go ahead and scan that QR code to download the 13 News Now Hurricane Guide. It is information on supplies you should have on hand, emergency numbers you might need, and a whole lot more. It's very, very helpful. All right, make sure to join us right back here tomorrow night and every weeknight at 8 p.m. for Hurricane Hub Live. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.